Is there more to midlife than just getting through it? Absolutely. Welcome. I'm your host, Debbie Cunningham, jazz artist turned midlife mentor, and I'm here to say to you loud and clear, it's time for your midlife crescendo. Well, hey friends. Apparently, I brought a cold back from the beach vacation, so I might sound just a little bit different today. Our episode is going to be just a little longer than usual, so I'm going to jump right in to tell you all about my conversation with my very special guest. He is very near and dear to my heart because he is my son. He and I often have deep conversations about the issues we each face throughout life and how we perceive them differently. He is speaking to us today representing the younger generation. Many of you responded to my survey about midlife that you were struggling with the changing relationships of your now emerging adult children. It's a process to let go, isn't it? You spend so many years raising your kids, you are responsible for them in so many ways, and then all of a sudden, you are supposed to let go of those reins. It's not as easy as it looks. But it's just as much a process to manage life as a young adult. So we are talking about both sides and how we might all manage that better, especially since there are graduations and nests that are beginning to empty around this time of year. Now, if you don't have kids or you are way past this stage, I think you'll still find value in our discussion. You might be an aunt or a best friend or a mother or a grandmother of someone who is in this stage, and you may know someone who could benefit from it. I would love for you to share this podcast with them. So here's my conversation with Drake. Well, hey, everybody. Today I have Drake Cunningham on the podcast. Drake is a 25-year-old graduate student at Peabody Conservatory of Johns Hopkins University. He has a BFA in musical theater from Coastal Carolina University, and he's currently the GM of Great Big Game Show in Nashville, Tennessee. He also happens to be my son. Welcome, Drake. I'm so glad to have you on the podcast today.
Hi, Mom. Good to be here.
Well, the first question I always ask my guests is, can you tell us something about yourself that's not on your bio?
Absolutely. Something that is not about myself in that bio. Wait, crap. Oh, whoa. Hold on. We're going to take that back and do it one more time.
Can you tell us something about yourself that's not on your bio?
I absolutely can. My two favorite X-Men are Cyclops and Nightcrawler because Nightcrawler is very cool and Cyclops is colorblind.
Just like you.
Yes, ma'am.
Actually, I thought you were going to say that you like to drive your mom crazy with character voices, like you've been doing for the last, 20 some years.
You know, that would have been a good fact, but I had a feeling it would find its way into the conversation eventually.
Of course. Can you do your leprechaun voice?
Oh, sure. Well, what do you want me to say? All those darn kids always after me nondescript cereals and other things.
Way to go over copyright.
Yeah.
Around copyright. Thank
When
you.
working for a game show, you get very used to avoiding copywritten phrases.
I guess you do. Yeah, tell us about the game show. You enjoy that job, yes?
I do. It's wonderful. It's a ton of fun. We run live 60-minute game shows with some loose inspiration from fan favorite shows from TV throughout the years, but they are all uniquely designed by our game development team here in Nashville. We're located at the Opry Mills Mall, but it's an hour-long game show. We've actually got two different shows that are available to be played. One is the original show. It's kind of a mix and match variety show. We've got luck, skill, trivia, kind of a mixed bag of everything for people to come in and play. And our newest game is called Trivia Showdown. But it's not really like a study quiz trivia game. It's not just question after question. It's a bunch of different kinds of trivia, word, and skill games to kind of mix it up a little more even from what the original show was. It's not really a quiz. It's more of a you never know what you know until you try.
Exactly. And it's very fun. We've done it. We've done it as a family, and Derek and I have done it a couple of times. Since Drake works there, sometimes we get to go and try the new games. I am not a trivia nerd like the rest of my family, but even I found it fun. I thought it was awesome. So,
and you did a great job.
Yes, I did. I might have answered one or two questions. I don't know.
But you answered them right, and that's what counts.
This is correct. Anyway, well, listen, I've been wanting to have you on the podcast just to have a conversation with you about the transition from child to adult and really parenting kids to parenting adults. It's a bit of a challenge sometimes for we parents to realize that their kids are adults and free to
Oh
make
yeah,
their
I'm
own
terrible
choices.
at parenting adults.
Well, I'm talking about us, of course, that sometimes it's hard for parents to let go and realize that their kids are free to live their own lives.
Absolutely.
But adult kids are also going through a transition. What are some of the hardest transitions you see for most young adults as they move from being out from under their parents to basically living on their own or just moving into adulthood?
Gosh,
in that relationship with their parents?
That's a great question. I think to kind of speak to that in my sense, I went to college and I lived away from my family for 4 years for undergrad, right? In South Carolina, which was great. And I enjoyed school. But after finishing my undergraduate degree, I ended up moving back to Nashville. And since then, I still live with my parents. It's been 3 years and I'm still here. There's definitely the transition of trying to find what to do with all of the freedom of not living with your family. For me, that came when I went to my undergraduate institution. But I mean, as silly as it may sound, parents provide a lot of structure for young people, I think. And some people are not fortunate enough to have parents that do that. But I was. And without that structure, a lot of the time, I would be out playing board games with my friends until 3 a.m. And then I have to go back to my dorm, finish my homework, go to bed, wake up and be at my 9 a.m. class on time. Otherwise, my grades are going to suffer. It's kind of finding that balance of what you can do and what you should do is definitely a hard transition, I think, for a lot of kids, especially school wise. But even taking it out of school wise, there have been months where I'll get a performance gig at a theater and I'll move away for a month or 2 or 3 months and go perform somewhere. And that's different too. I ended up living in a hotel for 2.5 weeks while I was doing a show. And then I got transitioned into a cast house, which was totally fine. It was a great experience, but it's different. It's kind of learning how to be sustainable on your own without having your parents around. And it's not always the easiest thing in the world, but I don't know that it's the easiest thing for a parent to prep a child for. How do you teach a baby bird to fly other than thinking that they're ready and letting them step out of the nest, right?
Right. Well, and a lot of it is we can teach you a lot of things, but until you put it into practice, until you are out on your own, you can't really figure out the ebb and flow of basically adulting and doing life as an adult instead of having someone to tell you what to do.
Yeah.
However, even though you still live with us, you do work full time and go to grad school full time. So no complaints there.
Yes.
And you have a lot of freedom, right? You have a lot of freedom here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm kidding. I do. I have a lot of freedom. I think physically I have a whole lot of freedom because I'm 25 years old. I own a car. I work all the time. I have school all the time. I have friendships that I can go and like hang out with some friends. I'll go on dates with my girlfriend sometimes and just have that nice like freedom. It's good to have a life and be able to go do things. But also it's nice to be able to come home and sit down and play a game with my family or talk to you guys about things that might be bothering me. I think there have been moments where it felt like I may have had the physical freedom and not the emotional freedom to do some of those things. Because, for you have a child that is back in the nest. You went from being like
right.
fully around the house all the time with the kids, like raising us. Thank you again, by the way. To empty nesters, to having at one point both of your kids back in the house for a short time during 2020, and then back to empty nesters for a year, and then back to having another kid back in the house, getting all up in the space and changing everything around, throwing off the feng shui, if you will. And yeah, I think there have been moments where it's me trying to find my balance of what it means to be an adult and how I can make my own mistakes and learn from my experiences in the world while still recognizing that I am your child and I do live in your house. And then you having almost the inverse of that, of having your child back and you want to be there with your child, spend time, talk, do all these things, but also having your recognition that I'm 25 now and there might be a week where the times that you see me are we sit down to have dinner and it's you, me, and dad for 30 minutes. And that might happen twice in a week, and maybe that's all the time we really see each other and get to spend together for the week.
Right.
So I think there's definitely that weird transition, probably for both of us, I would say. I think a lot of people my age feel, I don't know if trapped is the right word. I've talked to a few friends about this topic as well, but I know quite a lot of people that live with their parents. I've read a lot of articles with the nice clickbaity headlines, kind of thing like millennials and Gen Z are killing the housing market because they keep moving back in with their parents and things like that, or the housing market is dying because modern youth don't want to buy houses. I would love to buy a house. I
Right.
simply cannot afford one.
Yeah, well, in your defense, the housing market is astronomical right now, and
It's
most
crazy.
young people right now can't afford to buy a house or even share the rent of an apartment. It's crazy out there what it
Yeah,
costs.
it's wild. And I feel very fortunate to be able to live with a family that loves me and cares enough to let me move back home. Um, but I do know quite a few people that kind of feel trapped in that. And a lot of them, it isn't even having a bad relationship with their family. That's not the issue. The issue is a perceived lack of freedom because you live at home with your parents. And again, I will say I'm very thankful for the way that you and I are able to freely like discuss how we're feeling and kind of like find our middle ground on that. And I know it's taken time for us to
Yeah.
kind of figure everything out. And we're still figuring it out one step at a time, but I have some friends who, if we're out having like a board game night, sometimes we'll go to a buddy's house. We will play like Settlers of Catan or we'll play cards, all sorts of just different fun games. But those games take time.
Right.
And sometimes if it's like 10:30 at night, one of my buddies who's 24 years old will start getting texts from his mother saying, "Hey, you need to come home. Where are you? I expected you home 20 minutes ago." And he'll kind of respond and say, "I told you I was going out with my friends tonight and I wasn't sure when I would be back. And I thought we had figured this out." The storms here can be very serious. And there was a big storm passing over. And he looked at all of us and said, "I'm sorry, y'all. I have to go. My mom's kind of like freaking out." And he was not super thrilled with that, but ended up having to drive through the dangerous part of the storm and get home. That kind of thing is it feels almost like there's a power dynamic that some parents might feel the need to reinforce. We've kind of worked out a system that works pretty well for us, which is, "Hey, please let me know where you are." And
Yeah.
that's about it. I mean, if I'm going out, I let you know, "Hey, I probably won't be coming home for a little while. I'm going to go out and get a drink with some friends, or I'm going to go play some board games." Anything like that. I let you know that I might go watch a movie somewhere. But I'm not going to be updating you every 5 minutes because I want to be able to live my life and focus on the moment with my friends and like have my social life as well. If it gets to like 10:30 or 11, sometimes I'll get a message that says, "Hey, just making sure everything's okay." And if I am checking my phone and I see it and I respond in the moment, that's great for us. But also we have reached the point where it's not, I don't answer you at 10:30, so you text me at 10:45, 10:50, 11,
No.
11:10, 11:15. There's no need to like badger, and I appreciate that.
We've come to that place where, because pretty much you can stay out as late as you want. If we think you were planning on being home and you don't show up an hour or so, or if there is bad weather, we usually text and say, just check in, make sure you're cool. And that's pretty much it. But we don't really because you're an adult, you are free to live your own life. You just happen to live in our house. I would say most parents want to stay connected with their kids because they don't want to lose that relationship, but they also care about their kids and they want to know that they're doing okay emotionally. But you talked a little bit about some of the situations you've heard, but what are some ways you think we can continue to build that relationship or stay connected with our adult kids without making them feel suffocated by their parents?
That's an awesome question. And this may sound unattainable based on the way that time works. I think that starts when your kids are young. There's a burden of trust that has to be placed in both directions. Um, I think if your kids have grown up feeling like the only relationship you have with them is one of an operator, like a controller or an operator, and someone who completes tasks, the parent being the operator and the person completing tasks is the kids. If the only relationship you really have is, hey, do your homework, and okay, I'm doing my homework, like a little robot, your kid's probably not going to want to tell you how they're feeling. When they're an adult, they're not going to feel like there's an emotional bridge that has been formed to want to share those things. But even parents that go out of their way and work really hard and forge really good connections with their kids, like you and dad did. I mean, there have been moments in my life where I'm having a bad time and you've known I was having a bad time, and you'll be like, hey, are you okay? And I'm like, yeah, I'm fine. And you're like, I'm really worried about you. And I'm like, I'm good. I'm fine. I just don't want to share it in that moment. The other important thing is making sure your kids have the emotional awareness and emotional tools needed to voice how they're feeling. A lot of the issues that you and I have encountered in me not telling you what I'm feeling or how I'm feeling have been, and we discussed this as well, one, a completely outlandish perception that I would be shamed for what I was thinking or feeling, which wasn't true. And when I told you that, you were like, why did you think that? And I said, I don't know. I don't have any premise for it. You've never shamed me for anything. Uh, it doesn't make sense, but feelings don't always make sense. And the other thing was I didn't always necessarily have the words to describe what I was feeling. And a really great thing that has worked for you and I is sometimes I'll start talking about something and you'll feed me solutions, and I will genuinely just say, I just need to word vomit. I just need to tell you what I'm feeling without you seeking a solution. It's just like any kind of successful relationship, friendship, romantic, platonic, professional. Sometimes someone might be telling you something and it is not because they need you to be a hero. They just need you to be present. And I think that's one thing that may help a lot of parent and kid relationships. On occasion, you just need someone to listen, even if what you're saying doesn't make any sense. And I think that is honestly probably a really good starting place for a lot of like parents and children that may feel like they're not able to find that common ground or connect, or for parents that are concerned and want to get that emotional connection with their kids. It kind of starts with you in a reciprocal way. Like I said, there's that burden of trust. Tell your kid how you're feeling, even if it's bad. If you're having a hard time, it's okay to sit down with your child and say, hey, I want you to be able to tell me how you're feeling and understand what's going on in the world. If it will make you more comfortable, I am more than willing to share with you how I'm doing as well. And hopefully that is a good like door opened between the two of you to start sharing those things. I think there's also an unfair connection between parents and their children, because a lot of kids almost have this like white knight hero like perfection that they place upon their parents unfairly, I'll say. But I mean, you raised me. Maybe it wasn't perfect, but in my mind, it might be hard for me to hear, hey, I'm having this emotional struggle right now, or hey, I'm having this kind of burden right now because, well, if my mom can't do this, if my dad can't do this, how the heck am I supposed to do it? Like,
Right.
what in the world is going on? But I think that is where we can kind of reframe the mentality of that too, to wow, it's not just me having these weird mental emotional struggles. My parents have gone through this too and do go through this still. And that can and should be a connection point, I think.
I think that makes a lot of sense too. And I think probably most of the behaviors that we parents have toward you adult children in the process of letting go, we feel fear. We feel fear of losing our relationship with you because we're losing a proximity with you because now you're off on your own, or obviously you still live here, but you're pretty much, we don't see you all the time because you have your own life. You know, you work full time, you're doing grad school full time. So you're very, very busy. And, but there's, I think for a lot of parents that are texting their kids all the time and expecting them, even in their 20s, like to be home or whatever it is, that there's a fear element from the parent side that they're afraid of losing that relationship. And that's the only way they know how to keep the connection. But I think there are better ways to stay connected with our adult kids without making them feel suffocated.
I think there has to be. I mean, there has to be another way, right?
But I think opening the door of communication is part of it. Like being honest about what you're feeling. And like, not like for you and me, we've gone through that a little bit where I would say, you know, when I don't hear from you, when you first started coming, when you first came home and you started staying out with your friends till, you know, midnight, 1 a.m, I'm like, I can't sleep if I don't know where you are. You know, my brain is like, I'm worried about my child. But we worked it out where you said, hey, mom, I'm staying out late tonight. So, but I'm with whoever you were with. I'm with my friends. Just, and that was enough for me to know that's okay.
Yeah,
Right.
I think
Communication
putting
is the key.
any kind of system in place. Yeah, communication is the key to almost everything is
Not
frankly what
true.
I've learned over the past few years, I suppose. But I I think you have to find a system that works for you, which for you and I, if you don't mind me sharing, was we sat down one night and we both got kind of teary eyed after a long discussion. But you said, I'm so worried about you. And I looked at you and I was kind of frustrated and I said, why? And you said, because I don't know where you are. And I said, but I don't always need you to know where I am because sometimes I'm not in the mindset of, oh, let me tell my mom where I'm going right now. I'm in the mindset of, oh my gosh, I have friends. I have not always felt like I have friends. It's so exciting for me to be able to go somewhere and
Right.
do something with people. And so we both had that realization. I was like, wow, my mom is scared right now. Like she's feeling anxious about these things that are going on because she doesn't know what's happening in my life. So she can't protect me if something happens. But you were having the same realization of, I may not always be able to protect this kid because sometimes you have to scrape your knee and then learn how to walk on the sidewalk so you don't trip the exact same way every time.
And the protection is an illusion anyway, because even though when you're little, we think we protect you, but ultimately only God is the one that takes care of us fully.
Absolutely.
And I know that. And leaning into that as a mom has certainly leaning into my faith and trusting God with your life and where you're going has lightened that load a lot for me. So that's been a blessing, but also having those honest conversations, feeling like I can say, I just feel we don't really have this issue anymore, but because
No, we
we
don't,
worked
which
it
is
out,
great.
because we
But
worked it out and we had those hard conversations as I was learning to let go and you were, you know, learning to be on your own. And I never wanted you to feel like you had to be reporting in to your mom. It was such a weird thing when you were at college. I didn't think about what you were doing because you weren't living in my house,
yeah,
right?
but now you can see me, but you're not sure why I'm not here when I'm not here. So you
Right.
just want to make sure everything's okay. And
Yeah.
I understand that way better now than I did
Yeah.
back when we were actually having the struggle. But I remember an important part of that conversation. You and dad both actually voiced to me. You said, we're worried about you. Or like we get nervous, we get anxious sometimes. And you said it has made me very stressed sometimes to not know what's going on with you. And you voiced to me how nervous that made you or how stressful it could be. And I voiced to you that I understand that, but we have to find a way for that not to stress you out, because in turn, you being stressed about where I was a lot of the time stressed me out because I didn't want it to have an impact on your health.
Right.
Because stress is a very dangerous thing, as I'm sure a lot of us have learned through school and work and life. Stress is a hard thing, and it can take years off your life if you're too stressed all the time. And that's exactly what I said to you. I said, Mom, I love you, and I am so thankful that you care enough about me and have so much compassion for me that not knowing what's going on with me stresses you out. But if you're that stressed all the time, and if it's keeping you from sleeping, I'm now stressed because I don't want anything bad to happen to my mom because I love my mom.
Right.
And we found that common ground in between, realizing that what we were doing in both directions was stressing the other person out, and
Yeah.
stress wasn't helping either of us, but the only thing that did was talking about it.
Right.
And I think a lot of the issue from my generation's side is going to be that perception of shame or judgment. I mean, I know a lot of my friends that are afraid. I don't know if afraid's the right word, but they are pretty confident that if it came to blows, or if they were to tell a parent, "Hey, I'm feeling really depressed right now," the parent would be like, "Well, what did I do wrong? Why is the way I've treated you not good enough?" And that's not the case. It's not a personal thing toward you. It's not an attack or an outward change. But for full transparency, there have been moments where I told you and Dad that I was feeling pretty depressed, and the response I got wasn't, "What did I do wrong?" It was, "Why?" And if I had a reason and I told you, you would say, "Okay, let's try to find a way to work through that," or you would listen to me. But in the instances where if I need to just take a second and lay on the ground and stare at the ceiling because I'm so overwhelmed and I don't know what's going on, and I'll just sit there and have a moment, and you'll say, "What's going on?" And I say, "I don't know." The room goes completely silent, and you will both just sit there and be present with me. And it doesn't feel like judgment because you don't keep asking me the questions. Sometimes you have to keep asking questions. If something's super serious, if someone's like voicing to you that they're having like bad thoughts or struggles and tendencies, it's great to ask the questions and like find answers and solutions. But establishing a community, even just within your family or within your household, of being able to talk to each other and disagree with things without judging each other is
Right.
super important, because you and I don't have the same opinion on everything.
No. Mm-mm.
But when I share something with you, if you give me a response that makes me feel like what I just said was judged, I tell you that and you say, "I can see how you might feel judged by what I just said. Can I rephrase it?" And we say, "Yeah." And we're
Right.
able to like communicate and keep moving through those moments. I think a lot of the fear of judgment comes in there because nobody wants to be judged, especially not inaccurately to how they see themselves. If I see myself as a good, kind person and I tell you something about myself and you go, "Oh, that guy's a jerk." No, I'm not. I'm a good and kind person. I just established that that's how I feel about myself, and now I want to defend myself. So just having the open availability to say anything you need without judgment, I think is probably the best, if not only, starting place to kind of establish that. Even if, like, for people my age, if that means being able to hear something you don't want to hear from your parents, and instead of taking the moment to rebut and say, "No, this is why you're wrong," or vice versa from the parents, if your kid says something that is way out of line with like what you believe or how you live your life, instead of taking that moment to be like, "No, this is why that's wrong," just letting it linger. Just let it sit in the air. You can disagree about it, but you don't have to be right. There is no point in being right if there is no one that will talk with you about it. And if you are in a room where you're always right, you're probably in the wrong room, because then you're never learning anything new and you're never getting new answers. And your kids, I mean, when it comes down to it, you and I have had this conversation a million times. I think you're brilliant. I think you and dad are two of the smartest people I've ever met, and I'm so thankful for that. But you guys will tell me all the time that you think I'm so much smarter than you are. And whether or not that's true doesn't matter. The point is, I've had a very different life experience than either of you did, and I've
Hmm.
grown up learning different things. But there are a million things that you can teach me every day, which means since I've had such a different experience, there are probably a million things that I can teach you every day. So neither one of us is going to be right every single time. And I'm
Exactly.
glad for that because that would make for a really boring conversation.
Yeah, there's so, and really your generation is so helpful with tech things for my generation because technology came in so late in my life. As far as, I mean, I already had kids when PCs came around, when we first had email and the internet. I mean, we were adults. You guys grew up with it.
There's so much to learn in so many different places. I mean, you and dad have taught me so much about music because that's kind of what we all do. But I think the thing you've taught me about more than anything else is people. I mean, we've grown up in a very, I would say, people centric household. We've got a pretty big family and we have a pretty, I would say that the most important thing to our household is love. And I think love of people comes pretty close to first on that list. I mean, we are always here for someone if needed. And
Mhm.
the only reason that I am that way and that Deanna is that way is because you and dad are that way. If
Yeah.
someone showed up at our door and they needed a place to stay, you would be that place to stay. And you guys were always so compassionate. And I am so thankful to have that worldview, like moving on in my life, because I, I have been blessed enough to have a few friends tell me, Drake, I think you are one of the nicest people I've ever met. And I wholeheartedly disagree with that sentiment. I think everybody is pretty close to equally as nice to one another or equally as nice on standard. I think there's the capacity for the same niceness. The difference is Deanna and I were raised to be kind, and we will always keep that kindness at the forefront of what we do even in disagreeing with people. That doesn't mean I'll never say a mean word. It doesn't mean I won't stand up for someone that needs to be stood up for. But if you can't teach your kids to be kind, you can't expect them to be kind to you.
Mm.
And if you cannot give your kids respect and show your kids what respect for other people looks like, they will not be able to give you respect or forge a relationship with you that's based in respect.
I think that's a key for this adult season, this young adult season where you are obviously you're an adult at 18, but I mean this in the young 20s.
Kind of, yeah, sure.
What? Oh, I
I
mean at
I mean,
25, but you're
yeah,
25 now. I mean in your early 20s as you're really learning how to manage life as an adult. I think mutual respect is such an important key for parent a child relationships because you're an adult and I need to treat you that way and I need to treat you with respect. And you also, and you do this, you treat us with respect, even, but you're free to disagree with us. Like we've given you that, we have that space in our relationship where we can discuss things we don't agree around. And so we can agree to disagree.
which I
And
appreciate because we have different lives and we've had different experiences. So, of course, we're not going to have the exact same opinion on everything. That would
yeah.
be crazy. Then I wouldn't be your child, I would be your clone.
So true. Well, what do you think are some things that parents can do? I mean, we talked about it, treating them with respect, treating them with, or communicating with them when there's a struggle. Do you think that's the biggest thing that you see that parents and adult kids are not doing is communicating like their feelings? Do you think that's one of the biggest things?
I think communicating feelings is, yeah, probably the biggest thing. Uh, Also, I just want to take a quick moment and reference. By the way I'm talking, I feel like a Psychology Today article or something. I am a music composition major in my master's degree. I promise I'm not the foremost professional on any of this, but just from my experience and things that have worked and the relationships I've been fortunate enough to have and get out of in my life, friendships, romantic relationships, like just professional connections, things that have come and gone and stayed that are worthwhile and not worthwhile. If you can't talk about your feelings, then you're not treating yourself like a human.
So if there is a parent out there who is struggling in their relationship with their adult child, and they feel like, they never want to communicate with me, they never want to tell me anything about their life, what advice would you give them to begin to bridge a relationship with their adult child?
If I had to give advice to someone who is trying to form or bridge a relationship with their adult child, first and foremost, I think you can, one, if you are aware of some way that you have or may have wronged your child or could have been perceived to have wronged your child, apologize.
Yeah.
The most limited resource that a human being has is time, because it's the one thing that we can truly run out of, and we do 100% of the time. There are not enough seconds in the day to not apologize to someone that feels you have wronged them. I don't care if you think you've wronged them. That's not how that works. If you say something to me and it hurts my feelings, whether or not you meant it to, my feelings got hurt. Just say sorry. If I say something to you and it hurts your feelings, I would much quicker say, you know what? I'm sorry. I didn't mean for that to hurt your feelings, and that's my bad. I should have phrased that differently. And we can now move forward having acknowledged that something I did harmed you, even though I didn't mean for it to.
Right.
But the fact that I didn't mean for it to isn't what matters. What matters is that you got hurt. I have acknowledged that I hurt you, and now we can go on to something different. So I would say, one, give an apology for anything that may need an apology. And two,
Well, you can even ask. I know I'm cutting you off, but I was going to say, if you think you've wronged your child, or your child might be upset with you, you can ask, is there something I've done that's offended you? How can we mend this relationship and restore it?
absolutely. That was actually what my next step was going to be. So I'm glad you cut me off. That was perfect. We were on the same wavelength there. Absolutely. I was going to say, you can ask, is there anything you feel that I owe you an apology for? And if they say yes, don't get upset.
Right.
It's not an attack. It's not anything that you've done wrong. The other thing I think is required for two adults, especially a parent and a child that are working to form a relationship, especially if there isn't one in place that may be of the best quality, is forgiveness, both of the self and of the other. But you've got to take the hurt out of it. It's okay to feel hurt, but we can't lash out about that. When you told me that what I was doing was making you anxious and you couldn't sleep at night, I probably got defensive. In fact, if I'm remembering correctly, I think I did. And if we both remember, that didn't help the situation at all. I got defensive and I probably said something that hurt your feelings. And then you said, hey, that really hurt my feelings. And I had to take a step back and say, why did I just hurt my mom's feelings for no reason? She told me she was concerned about me.
Right.
So we had to have that conversation and figure out what was going on. But getting defensive doesn't help.
Right.
Apologizing and trying to find the root of the issue does. Asking those questions and talking about forgiveness. If you want to connect with your child, find activities to do with your child. Even if it's a little out of your comfort zone, it might be exactly what your child needs to feel like you care. If going to a weird indie coffee shop isn't really your thing, but your child likes to go to this weird indie coffee shop all the time, maybe offer to go buy them a cup of coffee and just go sit down. even if you don't end up having a long conversation, the effort means more than anything.
Yeah.
We all just want to be seen as we are without judgment. So I think both parents and kids should work on, I guess, obfuscating their judgment instead of passing judgment every time you look at your family members, because we're all different. I don't think we should expect each other to be the same. I think
Yeah.
asking questions, being willing to apologize, and focusing on listening before solving are the 3 steps that I would put out there if I absolutely had to.
I think that's great advice, Drake. Well, thanks for joining me on this conversation today. I know that I appreciate our relationship. I appreciate the way we can talk to each other and that we can have discussion. Your honesty and humility, your willingness to even apologize when you have hurt my feelings. And sometimes it's just because I'm an emotional mom. and sometimes it's not even because you've done anything wrong. It's just I took something the wrong way or in a way that you didn't intend. So but I'm grateful for you and that we have these conversations
Me
and
too.
that we have this good relationship. But
And if I may,
yes.
I just want to tag one last thing on here for any young folks out there that do have emotional moms, like you just said. Your moms are emotional because of how much they care about you and how much they experience and go through in life. And I'm not going to go all into the emotional labor that mothers put into everything they do. But what I will say is, if you have an emotional mom, I think that is something to be thankful for, because I would much rather have a mom who cares enough to be emotional and show me that and trust me with that than a mom who doesn't say anything at all.
Yeah. Well, thank you, Drake.
Of course.
I appreciate your words. Well, thanks for joining me on this conversation today. I'm sure that some of the people listening will hear what you have to say and maybe make some changes in their relationships with their adult children.
Godspeed. All right, bye, Mom. See you in 5 minutes.
Bye. Love you.
Love you. Bye.
I hope you enjoyed my conversation with Drake. This actually might be a great episode to listen to with your emerging adults and discuss some of these things ahead of time. If this episode hits a nerve, I just encourage you to give each other grace, forgive daily, and communicate with your kids. My relationship only deepened with my kids as I was honest about my own fears with all of the change. And if you are struggling to connect, I encourage you to find time to just go have fun together. You will be surprised how much this can soften hard hearts and plow the ground to reconnecting. And we'd love to hear from you. Send any comments or questions from this episode to Debbie@DebbieCunningham.net. Next week on the podcast, we will be returning to discussing the importance of women's health, so be sure to tune in. Thanks for tuning in today, and remember, midlife is just a brand new season to find your passion and purpose for your grand finale. Talk next week.